Hi guys, it's me again, Jen. If you're new here, I'm a Filipina living in Ireland and I'm sharing some of my stories here in my YouTube channel. From someone who's been living all her life in big cities like in Manila, in the Philippines, in Selangor, in Malaysia, I can say living in the countryside here in Ireland has been a breath of fresh air. Nothing beats the peace and quiet, the breathtaking views just right outside your doorstep, and the quality of life. But the reality is, there are these things that keep on biting me in the arse every now and again. With the current situation in Dublin, the sky-high cost of living, the intense competition and accommodation, there's a lot of expats and even locals who are now thinking of moving out of the city, which makes sense. That's what makes sense. Living outside of the city means lower cost of living and more ability to indulge yourself in the Irish culture. If you're an expat in Ireland, I reckon you love to travel and you love adventures. If you move out of Dublin, there are 3 things that's gonna make this difficult. How do I even start? First and foremost, all of the embassies are in Dublin. So if you are like me who own a rather weak passport, then you probably need to apply for visa every time you travel around Europe or elsewhere. And that's the problem. Prepare yourself for extra costs, extra days off wasted, and extra hassle. Let's use a real example, myself. And let's start with extra costs. Worst case scenario, you'll need to spend additional 300 euros just for your visa appointment. Mind you, that's on top of the visa application fee. And I'm gonna break it down to you. First of all, since you're living outside of Dublin, you need to travel to the embassy. From Kerry, I have 4 options on how I can reach Dublin. By car, by bus, by plane, and by train. By car, you could be spending around 100 to 120 euros in petrol round trip. Travel time would be around 3.5 hours non-stop. However, this is actually my least option because driving in Dublin could be a little tricky. Even Derek hates it. Plus, I won't be able to do anything else if I'm driving. The bus. This is the cheapest because you can get a 50 euro round trip ticket. Travel time would be around 4 to 5 hours. However, this is at the bottom of my list as well because unfortunately, I get dizzy in the bus. The plane. You can actually get a round trip ticket from Kerry to Dublin for only 40 euros. Yes, 20 euros one way. But that's only if you're only bringing a small bag with you, because if you're bringing a cabin bag, then you need to add around 30 euros for that one way. Now you think that that is cheaper than the bus, right? But actually it's not, because you need to consider either the cost of the parking if you're driving to the airport, or the cost of the train if you're taking the train from Tralee to Farnfor. So give or take 60 to 70 euros if you're taking the plane. Yeah, the flight time could only be 45 minutes to 1 hour, but then you need to consider the time that you're waiting in the airport. Now, if you've seen this video of mine, you might have heard me say that we have the best airport here in Kerry. And that's true. 30 minutes before your flight and you're still gonna make it. However, there's additional time for the travel to the airport. It could be around 30 minutes to 1.5 hours, depending if you're driving or taking the train. In total, you'll still be traveling for, let's say, 3 hours. It's not looking good, right? The last and final option for me is the train, and this is the best one for me. This can cost you around 50 euros if you book really early, so that's 25 euros one way. If you're a little bit late, kind of booking this the last minute, then you'll be looking at around 70 euros round trip. The travel time then will be 4 hours. To me, the time flies in the train. I just sit there, I open my laptop, I can do work, also for some personal matters like editing my videos, planning for the next content, and so on. However, just the same with the other options, there is always a downside. Sometimes if you're unlucky, you could be in the same coach with a loud group, and because of that you won't be able to really focus on what you're doing. It's a public transportation, so you can just rely that other people would be courteous about it, but you can't really tell them to be quiet. This train situation is what brings me to point number 2. Irish Rail has a free Wi-Fi on board. You'd expect, since Ireland is a first world country, internet connection will be more powerful and more stable. However, the Wi-Fi on board is not as great as you'd want it to be. There are dead spots. There's no connection at all. So if you plan to work in the train, just be careful not to rely on the Wi-Fi on board, because you could end up being in a very important call and then the internet drops off. You want to avoid that. So you need to be ready to work offline. As I've done this a lot of times already, what I normally do when I travel via the train is just I make sure that I don't have any calls. It's really gonna be tricky to stay online. Also in the train, the noise could be a little bit loud that you're not really able to hear the people you're talking to. Or on the flip side, there's too much noise in the background that everyone else on your call get disrupted. Definitely the train is fit for working, especially for people like me who can do the job remotely. However, if you plan to work during the trip, make sure that you have work that can be done offline, or better yet, just do work for personal stuff. However, the knockoff of that is that you'll be using one of your days off just for the appointment, which is a balls. So imagine that's only the first part of the extra costs, because there's also the accommodation piece of it. I'm lucky because I have some friends in Dublin. Shout out to my friends Everett and Pressy for always accommodating me when the circumstances permit. But then, what if all your friends are not available on your appointment date? Or what if the time slot that you got doesn't work in any of those 4 options that we just talked about earlier? The obvious answer is you will need to book a hotel or a B&B or a room. The going rate at the moment, based on recent experience, is around 200 to 250 euros per night. Oh, now we're down to the third point, and this is also related to traveling. I travel a lot for personal vacations and for work. So I really understand the problem with the connectivity of these flights, because if the outbound flight from Dublin to the final destination, I don't like final destination. So I really understand the problem with the flight connectivity, because there's only 2 flights from Kerry to Dublin. One in the morning and one in the evening. If your outbound flight from Dublin to your destination doesn't work with the arrival time of those 2 flights, then what are you gonna do? The obvious answer there is you need to prepare yourself for an extra travel time. Based on experience, quite recently, I traveled to Poland for work. Normally, the flight from Dublin to Poland is just 3 hours, but for me, it took more than 8 hours. The hassle is real. What brought me to this video is that I've been going to Dublin in the last 3 months, and there's another one next month. Just sometimes I tell myself maybe it's good if I live in Dublin, but then I realize that it's actually not, because I believe that benefits of living outside of Dublin, living here in Kerry, still outweigh the cons by a high magnitude. And anyway, I was thinking if I'm living in Dublin, maybe I won't even have the money to travel that much. So, you know, definitely I won't be living Kerry. So that's it, guys. I'm not trying to give out, just trying to give you guys some real insights on the struggles of living outside of Dublin. I still hope that you do, because it's really nice. I'm an advocate of that. You will see from the videos that I post. But yeah, I'll see you again on the next video. Ciao! There's just these things that, there's just these things that, there's just these things. There are this.